For other writers such as de Holbach, who published his late friend's Boulanger's laboriously titled work, Antiquity Unveiled by Its Practices, or a critical examination of the principal religions and political opinions, ceremonies, institutions of the different peoples of the earth, published in 1766. It recognized that history supplied the framework for understanding religion, and that to study religious practices was to study the history of man in society. This is a very important point because when it comes to the development of religion, there tends to be those who have a very idealistic view of religion, and they think or they superimpose their ideas of what they conceive to be religious tradition or understanding of religious tradition onto history. There are others who falsely view religion as a static force and thus causing the stagnation and indeed intellectual decadence and decay of society. There are others who may simply view religion as a violent affair that allowed for ruling classes to simply impose their will on the people. And there are others who may believe that religion was used to bring about some sort of utopic golden age of servitude to God. May I kindly suggest to all these people that whether it be the rose tinted view of religious history or the very pessimistic or negative view of religious history, both of these fail to account for the development of religion, its usage in various contexts, and the fact that religion has been used, especially organized and popular religion and normative religion, as simultaneously a tool of liberation, a tool of intellectual development, and also a tool of repression and intellectual stagnation at the same time. The study of religious history allows us to trace the development of religious ideas, and that ultimately all human crafts and all human disciplines, including religion and religious theology and exegesis and jurisprudence, is also part of this constantly developing tradition. The most illuminating of the many histories of religion penned during the Enlightenment was The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon. Incredibly controversial on its release, Decline and Fall engaged with the beliefs of both Muslims and Christians, and attempted to chart the history of both the church and the empire, faith and society, and the civil and the sacred side by side. Far from attacking religion as nonsensical or arguing for a radical removal of the powers of the church, these Enlightenment thinkers contributed to secularization by a careful, considered process of historical inquiry, looking not to the gods for answers but to fellow men here on earth. An important aspect, perhaps, is that it ignores the spiritual aspect of mankind. The Enlightenment, with its very materialist and scientific focus, can perhaps overlook the importance of spirituality or connection with God in the first place. Indeed, whilst their critiques of organized religion in many cases may be valid, it wouldn't be fair to dismiss all of the various major world religions as simply oppressive, especially when they have contributed much to human understanding and human development and benefit. And furthermore, it will not be pertinent for us to simply reduce the need to worship God and this natural desire to affirm divinity as superstitious. Indeed, it can have a very rational basis, it can have a very intellectual basis, and it forms the foundation of human life. It forms a very important part of human connection in this world via the divine. We now move on to morality in the Age of Enlightenment. As William Blake famously said, Enlightenment means taking full responsibility for your life. Before the 18th century, moral philosophy in Europe was understood through the lens of natural law. This was essentially a code of behavior passed down from God and applicable to all humans, which upholds the natural order of things. According to this pre-18th century view of values, certain values and rights are an inherent part of human nature and can be understood by everyone through the application of reason. Some Enlightenment philosophers argue that people were designed to act rationally without the hand of God, and if allowed to exercise their reason without the restraints of the state or church, they could be relied upon to act in a way that would further the happiness of others. The issue with this kind of secular understanding is that it removes the religious basis of these values. Many of these values come from religious traditions, particularly from the Christian tradition, and furthermore, the basis of these rights tends to be the divine or religion or religious or deeper metaphysical philosophical values. It's no wonder that the founding fathers of the United States of America, for example Thomas Jefferson, wrote in the Declaration of Independence that we believe that these rights are self-evident and these are God-given rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, not simply rights that are not sustained by a creator. Furthermore, many may argue that the only rationally feasible way to sustain a framework for these kinds of rights would be a deeper metaphysical and philosophical framework which employed religion as well. This utopian ideal of natural law argued that human progress and betterment was possible through education and the improvement of the individual's material and social life. Indeed, education has been stressed in various religious traditions and has formed the foundation of modern society in order to train people to be good workers and good professionals. One issue with the modern education system is that it is raising people to be loyal, submissive subjects who carry out orders and not necessarily great thinkers and intellectuals. However, without a doubt, the introduction of education for all has been an important development in the history of mankind and has overall brought about a lot of great benefits, even if the specific systems employed in those systems are not necessarily good or they need updating and reform. The current model of the schooling system based on the Prussian model, which was based on the needs of the industrial society of that time, are completely outdated and out of touch with the reality of our society today. However, without a doubt, education is still a requirement for today's society, and a new form of education and a new kind of education system, one that emphasized less dogma and more critical thinking, one that placed equal value on all the various disciplines of mankind, such as the humanities and the arts, and not just the sciences, one which emphasizes the importance of independent learning and cultivating passion for learning in one's students and not just forcing them to learn, one which tried to make them overall better people through the training of their morals and bodies. Such an education system would be much more in line with requirements of modern day society. And furthermore, an education system more adept for today's society would require perhaps less hours, but with more focus for cultivating one's independent passion for learning. A true successful education wouldn't force a kid to sit in a classroom for 12 hours a day. A truly successful education system would cultivate the habits and practices and mentality in a student that would make the student so passionate for learning that he would want to spend 12 hours by his own free will reading a book or studying a subject. The free man's natural pursuit of self-interest would benefit society, while the free man's inherent sense of reason would guarantee sound moral judgments. Put another way, it is only through man's freedom that the true natural law can operate. As Jesus Christ is reported to have said in the Bible, "Seek the truth, and the truth shall set you free." The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is reported as having said, "The seeking of knowledge is obligatory upon every Muslim man and woman." It is also narrated from him that the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets, and the virtue of the scholar over the layman worshipper is like as my virtue upon the lowest of you. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is also reported as having said that the one who seeks a path, seeking in it knowledge, God will grant him a path in heaven, meaning God will grant him an ease easy sort of route into paradise in the afterlife. And it is also mentioned that the angels lay their wings out of pleasure for what the seeker of knowledge does, meaning the seeking and the pursuit of knowledge. And of course, many classical and traditional scholars may have interpreted these narrations to refer to religious knowledge, but the reality is that all forms of knowledge, whether they be quote unquote secular or worldly sciences or quote unquote religious sciences, and the reality is that this distinction is very problematic and not really correct, because ultimately God and his messenger and various religious traditions and the various gentlemanly scholars throughout history have all encouraged the seeking of all types of knowledge. And the reality is that knowledge, human knowledge, is a reflection of divine knowledge. God taught Adam directly the names of all things, so the root of this knowledge is divine. And furthermore, if this knowledge is sought with the right intentions in order to benefit people, in order to benefit the community, in order to please God, and in order to seek the divine and seek ultimate truth through this knowledge, then indeed any type of knowledge, whether it be religious or quote unquote worldly, if sought with the right intentions, becomes an act of worship automatically and a righteous deed. Indeed, the seeking of knowledge is a virtue in and of itself, regardless of what kind of knowledge it might be. And all peoples and all various traditions, in fact, would most likely happen to agree on this point.